Okay, so we start with the next heading, how to pursue the main part of the session. Now one has to meditate during the main part of the session. So first of all, we have to explain what is meditation. So it says familiarization techniques directed towards a single subject is what we call meditation. So you have to choose a single subject, a particular subject, and you direct your mind towards that specific subject. And the aim is to develop familiarity with that subject. Basically, you want to develop closeness. You want your mind to become closely affiliated or to closely understand, to become closely familiar with that particular subject. So this is what we call meditation. We have thoughts that lack faith in our spiritual guide. So we turn our attention towards thoughts of faith in him. We use this technique to familiarize ourselves with these thoughts and to gain control over them. So let's say we begin by meditating on the proper way to rely on the spiritual teacher. But straight away we see that the mind follows a different path. So the mind entertains thoughts that have no faith for the teacher, that have wrong views for the teacher, that doubt the teacher, think that the teacher is uneducated, that they don't know, they don't understand, or in any case they don't know how to teach the subject to us, and so forth. So all of these are thoughts that come into our mind. So what we try to do with meditation is to gain control of our mind, because when we're running these thoughts in our mind, this is an indication that our afflictions, and in particular the three poisons, have taken control of our mind. This means that we have lost control of the mind. The mind is under the influence of afflictions. So what we try to do with meditation is to make the mind familiar with healthy types of thoughts. So we try to break that control or that influence of afflictions, and developing familiarity with the opposite of these afflictive and mistaken views. Developing familiarity with these correct thoughts is the purpose of meditation.
Awesome.
So if you, having explained here in brief what is meditation, you can now sit down and understand why is it that we're not capable of meditating, basically. We try to meditate and nothing comes. We don't have anything to show for this effort. They say that the person is under the control of the mind. We know that. But then the thing is that the mind is under the control of afflictions. And if your mind is under the control of afflictions, it means that afflictions govern your mind, which in turn govern you. And if afflictions are in control, do not expect anything good to happen. Nothing good will happen as long as afflictions are in control. So what we try to do with our meditation is that we choose a focal object, something which is other than afflictions. And we try to familiarize the mind, to stir the mind, to allow the mind to become closer and more familiar with this particular focal object. And this is what we mean by meditation. This is the meaning of meditation. There are a lot of people who misunderstand what meditation means, and they think that meditation means closing your eyes and sitting very still and preferably in the lotus position. And if you can just sit in that posture with your eyes closed, this is meditation. It is a pity because quite a lot of people have this belief, and it is obvious that people who believe this, they do not know that there is things such as analytical meditation and placement meditation. Actually, Lama Tsongkhapa in Lamrim Chenmo has dedicated quite a few pages into explaining the whole meaning of meditation, and in particular explaining analytical meditation. So it is good to understand those things. Mm-hmm. So at the top of page 212, our minds have come under the power of delusions, so we turn our attention to something else to put a stop to it. There are two sorts of meditation. So up to now he has explained what is meditation, And now he will go into the classifications. So there are two sorts of meditation, analytic and fixation meditation. Analytic meditation is thinking many times over quotations, reasonings, formal logic, and so on. This is called familiarization. Okay, so first of all, what is analytical meditation? Analytical meditation is a process in which, in order to understand something or to prove something, you will go you will consider various things. The first thing that is mentioned here is quotations, right? So you might have quotations from the Buddha or quotations from other great masters and so forth. If you are not convinced with these quotations, or if these quotations are not enough for you for some reason, then the next step is to utilize reasoning and go over reasoning again and again. If quotations and reasoning are not enough for you, the third step is to give an example. Actually, the use of a suitable example is very beneficial because it simplifies things, and basically it indicates what the thing is without having to go through, the technically correct reasoning and so forth. So, for example, someone might mention the word mind generation or bodhicitta, and you say, what is this? I don't know. What is it? So imagine someone trying to explain it to you. So they might read you a passage from a text, so a quotation, or they might give you some formal reasoning, or at the end they might give you an example and say, bodhicitta is like when you feel like this, or when you're thinking like that, it is like this, like that. So the example is very useful. Thinking over examples is very useful. And at the end, we also have other types of reasoning. So giving you, it is like this because of this and this reason. And we don't just use one quotation or one logic or one reason or one example. We want to use as many as possible because we want to analyze it from every perspective, from every possible angle. So if you employ this technique, basically your mind is becoming familiar with that particular object, the focal object that you have chosen. So this is why it is called familiarization. And then it says, I will discuss this on a simple level. We actually do nothing but analytic meditation all the time, but we direct it the wrong way. It is analytic meditation on the 3 poisons. So he says we are very good at analytical meditation. We do it all the time, but the focal object is either attachment or hatred or confusion, the 3 poisons. So he says, take the example of anger. First, you do not recall your enemy and you do not develop any anger. It's like this. If you don't see the enemy, if you don't think about the enemy, you don't have any anger for that particular person. But you develop anger only if you recollect him. Recollect him and you say, last year he said such words to me. He did this to me. Then he did me such wrongs. Finally, he gave me such looks. So initially you don't have anger. You don't remember the enemy. And then suddenly you choose to focus on that enemy. So that person becomes your focal object. And now you bring up all these reasons that you have for anger. So, last year he did this, then he did the other, then he said this. They said such awful things to me, right? And even the way they look at me, is, infuriating. So externally, your face reddens and your armpits become sweaty. So you can see now you're having physical symptoms of this anger. You have developed such anger that if the enemy of yours were there before you, you would doubtless punch him in the head right then. So you have worked yourself up so much, you have built up your anger from 0 to so intensive anger that your face has become red, that you're sweating, and that honestly, if that person was right there in front of you, you would slap them or punch them or hit them, right? So you have performed an analytic meditation And it is the same for attachment, etc. So this is what happens with analytical meditation. You choose a particular object and you go over and over and over the reason or the logic, the examples, and the more you go over and over that, the more you intensify your feeling for that. In this case, we're doing meditation on anger, so we have really strengthened anger. If we did meditation on some positive quality, we would have ended up reinforcing that positive quality. So this is exactly the point that Papom Rinpoche says. He says we all know how to do analytical meditation. It's just that we choose the wrong object. We choose to focus on the three poisons. So I conclude by saying you have performed an analytical meditation, and it is the same for attachment, etc. Actually, we perform a lot of analytical meditation on attachment, and in many ways it is worse than analytical meditation on anger, because when we become angry and when we act on our anger and so forth, we all recognize at the end, of the process, we all recognize this as being a mistake. Like, we recognize anger as being something wrong. The thing with attachment is that basically we don't see the mistake. It's not the same as anger. So what happens, the typical example of attachment here between a male and a female, there is attraction. And when that happens, there is what is called inappropriate attention. Inappropriate attention, it means that you're looking at the object of your desire and you are superimposing. Superimposing here means you are exaggerating the qualities. You are seeing qualities that perhaps they're not there at all in the first place. Or if there is some small quality, you will exaggerate it and you will make it to be something which is amazing, and that's why you are fascinated with that person. And many times when you hear people who are infatuated with somebody else, you will see that almost out of nowhere, out of nothing, they try to build up this case of magnificence for the other person. So you hear them say things like, how amazing is the shape of their ears, and how you actually notice their nose. Their nose is just so amazing. So they would use any physical characteristic to latch into that and then build it up into being something really amazing. If other people criticize that person that we like, we become quite angry at them. So we become totally focused and intoxicated, almost drunk, intoxicated with that other person. Our parents might try to give us advice and say, come on now, don't behave in this way, but we would not listen. And we declare, if I cannot be with him or with her, I will die. I have to be with that person. And then what happens, you move in together, you start living together, and then you start discovering that there are not so many qualities, and you start paying attention to the faults. So now you start paying attention to the faults and you see more and more mistake in that person. And now you go back to your parents and you say, if I do not divorce, I will die. I cannot stand this. So you have already declared you're going to die twice as a result of this meditation on attachment. And this is what it is. This is what we say. We perform analytical meditation, and it has that function of exaggerating things. So he says, when we are thinking over debate arguments, with the exception of thoughts about ways to defeat the others, that inwardly focused analysis is the analytical meditation I'm talking about. So Papom Rinpoche here gives an example of debate. What happens when you do debate? So he says sometimes there is wrong motivation, and your motivation is, what can I say next in order to defeat the opponent? But if you take these cases of wrong motivation away, other than that, the process of debate is a very good example of analytical meditation, because you have this inwardly focused analysis where you are constantly analyzing. So it says, in a sense, we are great meditators. We perform analytic meditation exclusively on delusion and the three poisons, and we will achieve something quite different from the other great meditators. So again, he's stressing the point that we are very good at meditating, we are great meditators, but it is just that we have chosen the wrong focal object because we keep focusing on our afflictions and the three poisons. So it says here, we are said to be in danger of going to a world where all the hills and valleys are red hot. So he's talking about here the hells and the nearing hells, where everything is red hot, right? So it says the result you will get from this type of meditation, focusing on your afflictions, reinforcing your afflictions, will be rebirth in the hells, will not be the same results as those of the great meditators. So instead of doing such unbeneficial analytical meditation, we should do analytic meditation on what constitutes the optimum human rebirth, on why this sort of rebirth is so hard to gain, on how it is so beneficial, and so on. So clearly he says, you know how to meditate, just change the focal object to something which is really beneficial, such as precious human rebirth and so forth. So as it says here, we should do analytic meditation on what constitutes the optimal human rebirth, on why this sort of rebirth is so hard to find, to gain, and how it is so beneficial, and so on. So it says instead of focusing on all these afflictions, it's much better if you sit down and analyze this perfect human rebirth. Why do we call it perfect human rebirth? Well, because it has freedoms and endowments. So it has those 8 freedoms. What are those 8 freedoms? What's the meaning of each one of those freedoms? What are the 10 endowments? What sort of qualities, what sort of characteristics are we looking for in order to classify a particular rebirth as a precious human rebirth? Then consider, why is it so rare? Why is it so difficult to find it? Why it is so meaningful? Why do they say it's rare to find but so meaningful once you obtain it? What can I achieve with it? So sit down and do this type of analytical meditation. That would be much more useful. And then it says, you should be sure about the individual headings of the Lamrim. In the section dealing with meditation on the optimum human rebirth and how difficult it is to acquire, you meditate on this alone. It is a great hindrance to pursue meditation on a Lamrim topic arbitrarily, doing whatever you please because you feel it's Dharma, nothing can go wrong. And then it continues by saying, this is like mixing soda into a jar of salt. Such meditation is ruined by excitement and dullness. The virtuous practices you then perform all your life will be flawed. If this happens, you may feel, I have meditated on this topic, but you should not trust such thoughts. So it says here, it's a very important thing in the Lamrim. The important thing is that the Lamrim comes with headings. It comes with outlines. So when you're meditating on a particular subject, such as, for example, the precious human rebirth, you have to meditate on exactly these headlines, these outlines, in exactly this order. Do not think that you can just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to meditate on precious human rebirth, and then entertain haphazardly any types of thoughts that come into your mind. Or you open this book and that book and you look at this and you had this thought and this thing just popped into your mind and you think, oh, let me entertain that thought, include this. This is not the proper meditation on the precious human rebirth according to the Lamrim. The Lamrim has this very structured way of meditating, and you have to start from the beginning and follow all these topics or these headlines that are included in this topic. Only then is the meditation fruitful, right? So it says it's a great hindrance to pursue meditation on Lamrim topic arbitrarily, doing whatever you please. So whatever comes into your mind, and you sort of like feel reassured because you think, oh, this is Dharma, this is meditation, this is Lamrim, nothing can go wrong. And at the same time, you allow yourself to sort of like meditate on whatever comes into your mind. So this is a mistake. It gives the example here that says it is translated as, this is like mixing soda into a jar of salt. So anyway, you get an idea of what happens. So you can have the experiment, soda and salt. The actual Tibetan says this is like mixing oil, butter, and salt. So what are you going to get out of this concoction? If, let's say, you want to make proper Tibetan tea, you have to follow the recipe, isn't it? You don't just throw everything, you don't just mix everything. Such meditation is ruined by excitement and dullness. And the virtuous practices you then perform all your life will be flawed. It means you can meditate for the rest of your life, your entire life. You can meditate on these topics, but if you don't have the discipline to follow the headlines or the headings that you must be following, then all these meditations will be wrong. They will be mistaken. And if this happens, you may feel, I have meditated on this topic, but you should not trust such thoughts. It means at the end, you will have achieved nothing concrete. You cannot trust these meditations because they are just haphazard thoughts arising in your mind, no discipline, no technique, and no results to show for. Okay, so it says here, if this happens, you may feel, I have meditated on this topic, but you should not trust such thoughts. So if you meditate in this mistaken way, as we say, you can spend your whole life meditating. It will be wrong meditation, mistaken meditation, because you don't have the right technique. And at the end of this long meditation career, you will have nothing solid, nothing concrete, nothing to show for, nothing to rely upon. Then it says, let's take the case of meditation on death and impermanence when not done as above. It is sufficient to meditate on the quotations, reasoning, formal logic, and examples given on the subject. And so it says, if you don't do the wrong meditation, the correct way to do the meditation, let's say the topic is death and impermanence, is, first of all, begin with quotation. There are many quotations that talk about impermanence, so use these quotations. Then use the reasoning. Reasoning here refers to formal, correct reasoning. Even if you are not very, let's say, educated in the exact strict logic of how to formulate a correct reasoning, you can still use general logic, general reasoning. There are many reasons that you can follow to establish death and impermanence. And at the end, there are many examples. So use all these techniques. These are the tools. You need to rely upon those things. And it says you could even add some items, like the person who died in your village today. So you're going through examples. If you want, a very clear example, you say, the case of this neighbor who passed away recently. So this can help you in your meditation. Then it says, further, take your guru's oral teaching as the root. Obviously, you will be relying upon a teacher, and this teacher is going to give you instructions and advice on how to meditate on whatever the subject is. So take this as the root. This has to become like the basis of the most important thing of your practice. You build your practice around these instructions. And add to this even things like the folio you found in a wayside shrine. So what it's referring here to is that sometimes, there are some, like as you walk along the path, traditionally you will find little shrines or niches. And if people had, let's say, an old text or, some pages missing and so forth, instead of leaving it on the ground, they will deposit it in that little shrine. So suppose you're walking along the path and you pick up a page. It will be like a loose page, right? You read it and you try to take that meaning and see, how is that relevant to my meditation? And at all times, it's very good to be able to understand where the subject you're meditating on belongs in the Lamrim. So you should be able to say, okay, I'm meditating on death and impermanence. Is this a subject of the small scope? Is it of the middle scope? Is it of the great scope? You know, where am I in the Lamrim with this topic? So it says, if you think about the topic from many angles, you will develop realization with ease, just as you develop feelings of hostility by thinking about things from many angles. So it is like this. If you approach the subject from different ways, you look at it from this way, from that way, it becomes easier to realize it, to become more familiar with it. So it says, do that, approach it from many angles. Okay, so it continues by saying, your meditations are only analytic until you achieve mental quiescence. Okay, so it says your meditation are analytical meditation from the beginning, from the first subject, which is the proper way to rely on the teacher, all the way until you achieve calm abiding. And after you achieve mental quiescence, you can perform fixation or placement meditation, where you direct the mind to one thing. So analytical meditation is actually very important for us. The majority of the meditation that we perform is analytical meditation. So for example, if you wanted to meditate on mind generation, on bodhicitta, you don't have anything concrete upon which, let's say, to fixate the mind, but you just have something that you can analyze. So you're going to sit down and say, okay, what is the nature of that thing? What is the focal object of that thing? What are the classifications? What are the different types? And so on and so forth. So the more you analyze it, the more you come to comprehend it and develop it. It is very different from, let's say, meditating on the body of the deity. When you meditate on the body of the deity, you have an object that you can just observe and you can just place the mind on that object. But when you talk about, let's say, mind generation, which is bodhicitta, or when you talk about impermanence, or when you talk about emptiness, or when you talk about precious human rebirth, all those subjects are approached through analytical meditation. If we didn't have analytical meditation, actually, how would we meditate on those subjects? How would you meditate on impermanence? More importantly, how would you meditate on emptiness without analytical meditation? But even for things such as the precious human rebirth, right? Precious human rebirth, how are you going to understand it? You're going to say, what is precious about it? What are those freedoms? What are those endowments? What are the characteristics of this precious human rebirth? Why is it rare? What can you achieve with it? And so on and so forth. So it's all analytical meditation. Once you achieve calm abiding, from that point onwards, you can do placement meditation. Okay, then it says, some people claim fixation, which is placement meditation, is for mendicants, whilst analytical meditation is for scholars. That analytic meditation is detrimental to fixation meditation and so on. This is nonsense. So the actual Tibetan says that some people claim that fixation meditation is for kusali. So kusali here has been translated as mendicants. Kusali must have been a great type of meditator, right? And then we have analytical meditation is for the scholars. So either you are a great meditator and you're doing placement meditation, or you're a scholar, in which case you analyze. But if you look at the Lamrim Chenmo, the Great Stages of the Path by Lama Tsongkhapa, there is a great presentation there about the nature of meditation, about the importance of analytical meditation, how analytical and placement meditation relate to each other. Actually, if you do have the opportunity, it will be very good to look at these resources. It clarifies a lot of misconceptions about those things. So there is all this, there are many misconceptions about analytical and placement meditation. And as we say, Lama Tsongkhapa has actually clarified quite a lot of those things. There is this idea that one harms the other, one is detrimental to the other. But actually there is nowhere any such indication. As a matter of fact, they assist each other. It is said that once we obtain calm abiding, if from within that state of calm abiding, your mind decides to analyze something, such as, for example, mind generation, what is mind generation? If you do it from within calm abiding, it means you have the additional bonus of stability. So instead of the mind becoming distracted and scattered here and there, if you have the stability of calm abiding, this is definitely going to improve the quality of your analytical meditation. So definitely they don't harm each other, they support each other. Also, prior to obtaining calm abiding, what we do analytical meditation. And that analytical meditation builds up, if you want, the energy so that we can obtain calm abiding. And then that calm abiding becomes a cause for developing our special insight. So definitely we can see, and it's very clearly documented, that one supports the other. They don't harm each other. They don't antagonize each other. Then there is this statement here that says, fixation meditation is for the mendicants and analytical meditation is for the scholars. So the way it is, of course, he's voicing a misconception, right? This idea that analytical meditation is only for the scholars, it's wrong. Any person, you don't have to be a scholar. Anyone can perform analytical meditation. It's like, what is that thing? What is the nature? What is the focal object? What are the classifications? And so on and so forth. You can sit down and ask these questions. Obviously, if someone is a scholar, they will be able to penetrate more. They will be able to ask more questions. They will do a different type of an analysis from someone who is a very simple or, let's say, uneducated person. But that doesn't mean that if you are not a scholar, you are not allowed or you're not capable of doing analytical meditation. Anyone can perform analytical meditation. Anyone can have a go at placement meditation. All right, so these are a lot of misconceptions. So Geshe would like to stop here for tonight.